Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brother.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How are you doing, brother?
Alhamdulillah, I'm good.
Good. We know the purpose of this video is for you to respond to some of the comments made by Richard Dawkins and co, including Professor Myers. The first point I want to raise is with regards to your question to Richard Dawkins at the World Atheist Convention in Dublin, when you asked him about the design of the universe, and he responded with regards to the design of species. What would you like to say about that?
Bismillah. The first thing I would like to say is I would want to thank those atheists who accommodated us in Ireland in that conference. Thank you very much for that. Second point, my question to Dr. Dawkins. My question was pretty straightforward. It was very clear. It was very explicitly stated. And I asked him about the notion of design in the universe. My question was directly about the original universe, not the original species. And Dr. Dawkins misunderstood my question for some strange reason. And having heard my question, he said to me, "How dare you accuse me of believing in chance?" Well, my question was very simple. Because the atheistic position by default is the position of chance. There are only two options in front of us. The universe came about either by chance or by design. And my question was very reasonable in that sense. Because Dr. Dawkins is a strong proponent of atheism in the world. This is why I asked him this question. Would he believe in chance, or does he believe in design, as he keeps mentioning in his books? For example, in The Blind Watchmaker, he alludes to an apparent or an illusion of design in the original species or in natural selection. And this is exactly what I meant when I talked about the origin of universe. My question was not about the species, my question was about the origin of this universe. And he did not address my question.
So clearly he didn't address your question, and he probably just wanted to sidetrack the answer. The reason for that, I don't know if you remember, in the World Atheist Convention, he only said, "Oh, that's a question for physics, and I will give you a very crude understanding of physics." So he didn't really address your question, really, did he at all?
Not at all. My question was very explicit. It was clearly stated. I said, "What do you think about the origin of this universe?" And he instead went on to talk about natural selection, which wasn't my question, and then he talked about physics, and he said my answer will be superficial. Sure. So he did not give me an answer.
Good. Okay. The next question is with regards to Aristotle and Myers. Not that they share any intellectual similarities, of course.
Right.
But Professor Myers, he was talking to you during the World Atheist Convention, right outside the World Atheist Convention, and he was saying that the embryology in the Quran is similar and borrowed to the Aristotelian view on embryo development. How would you answer this?
Right. I would like to thank Dr. Myers for giving his time to us as well and being very patient with us. I really admire that. However, I don't think Dr. Myers actually answered our questions or some of our contentions. And he raised points which he couldn't substantiate himself. For example, he said Aristotle was the source which gave its embryology to the Quran. Yani Quran borrowed from Aristotle. Quran did not borrow from Aristotle. And we asked this question directly to Dr. Myers, "Can you give us any evidence?" And he failed to give us any conclusive evidence in this regard. So even Dr. Dawkins actually picked up on this, and on his website, richarddawkins.net, he wrote a small piece on this particular interaction we had with Dr. Myers, and he titled it, "Islamic Board Talks Over P.Z. Myers." And he goes on to talk about our interaction, and he states how impatient he would have been if he was in the place of Dr. Myers, and he would have walked away 5 minutes later, but Dr. Myers had a lot of patience with people like us.
Okay, but the thing is, with regards to Richard Dawkins, what he's written, or someone has written on his website, he actually talks about Noah's flood and calls you a liar.
No,
he said that you are rejecting Noah's flood because someone brought it up with regards to the biblical narrative, and he said that never happened scientifically, therefore the Quran is also wrong because it mentions the same thing. And you said no, the Quran doesn't. Please clarify.
Okay, he's referring to the interaction I had with a gentleman called AronRa. AronRa mentioned the notion of evolution, and I told him that evolution is not to be found in the Quran. Then he talked about the great flood, AronRa did not mention Noah's Ark, as Richard Dawkins seems to be thinking. I think Dr. Dawkins needs to go back and watch the video again carefully, because he seems to be thinking that there was a discussion about Noah's Ark. AronRa did not mention Noah's Ark, rather he mentioned the Great Flood. And I responded to him by saying there is no Great Flood in the Quran, which is exactly what the case is. Now, what does the Quran say? Quran talks about a flood. There is a flood of Noah in the Quran, but it is a local flood. When we talk about the Great Flood, it is a loaded term. That means the biblical great global flood. Quran doesn't talk about a biblical great global flood. Quran talks about a local Noah's flood. So I was right in that case, and Dr. Dawkins has grossly misunderstood what I said to AronRa. In fact, Dr. Dawkins calls me a liar, and unfortunately, he states, but I think he was wrong to climb down. He's talking about AronRa climbing down from not confronting me. And he states, the story of Noah's Ark is in the Quran exactly as he said. The Muslim was lying, as faith heads so often do, presumably again in an attempt to wrong foot. So, Dr. Dawkins, in fact, was mistaken. I wasn't lying. I was speaking the truth. There is no great flood in the Quran, and it is very clear. Then another point I wanted to address was the issue of thumma, when Dr. Myers contested our point about the stages of embryology in the Quran, and he said that if the Quran states that flesh comes after the bones, then the Quran is wrong. This is exactly what Dr. Keith Moore said, that flesh comes after the bones, and he contested the point of Dr. Keith Moore. But I asked him to tell us what the right view on embryology is, and he said that he's an embryologist, and both the bones and the flesh form simultaneously. I told him, if that's the case, the Quran can be reconciled with that fact, if it's a fact, that the word thumma can be used to describe things happening simultaneously, or things happening one after the other immediately. Immediate things happening. This can be seen in Lane's lexicon. If you go to one of the best dictionaries of Arabic language, Arabic and English, Lane's lexicon, if you go to the term thumma in this dictionary, you will see that thumma can be used in these two different ways, as I described in the video. So I was correct in this regard.
Okay, good. Thank you very much, Adnan, for that. Let me ask you a question, Jeremy, about your whole experience at the World Atheist Convention. Give me some thoughts about your interaction in Dublin.
Well, we had some interesting interactions, especially on the last day. We met some atheists and we told them how we felt about the convention. We had mixed feelings about different people behaving in different ways. For example, some people were very aggressive. They insulted us, they abused us, they laughed at us. Sometimes we would ask valid questions and we would get laughs in return. And other people were quite appreciative. They were quite accommodating, and we met some nice people. We had some constructive discussions. In fact, a couple of people I spoke to on the last day, I told them that I'm actually walking away with a stronger faith in Islam, not the other way around. This convention and listening to all of these top atheists in the world hasn't changed my views on Islam. Rather, in fact, my faith has been strengthened by listening to these people. Because some of the points they were raising were emotional. Some of the things they were talking about were superficial. For example, Maryam Namazi, she talked about Sharia law in a very superficial way. Unfortunately, her treatment was quite vicious and very, very biased. And she had a standing ovation, which was quite disturbing.
Well, she did have a lot of outdated cliches. But what was worrying for me is that during the convention, you had a lot of atheists making claims about the Quran and Islamic law that were actually not true, which shows to me that people pick their attitudes and their perceptions to religion, and specifically Islam and Islamic law, via media narrative, via an atheist narrative, which is a joke. For instance, they say that women have no rights because if they get raped, they need 4 male witnesses. Now, can you please address this issue, Adnan?
Well, this is a very commonly fostered notion about the Sharia law that women, if they are raped, they need 4 witnesses to prove that they were raped. This is obnoxious. This doesn't exist in the Sharia. This rule or this notion is non-existent in the entire Sharia law. It's not there, it's not present. So we're asking the atheists to produce the evidence. We don't want to see the constitution of Pakistan. Constitution of Pakistan is the Sharia law. Sharia law is the Quran, the prophetic tradition, and the ijma', the consensus of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. So if they can prove something, if they can provide something for us to see from the Sharia law which states that a woman needs 4 witnesses to prove that she was raped, then we will accept it. There is none. There is nothing.
So what does the Sharia actually say with regards to rape?
Sharia states if a woman is raped and she complains of rape and she comes to the qadi or to the judge and she files a complaint, any evidence will be accepted. Any evidence to prove rape will be, any evidence which is accepted in the UK and in America.
For instance, her testimony and DNA.
Her testimony, DNA, witnesses, anything which will prove.
Okay, so what kind of category of criminal punishment does it come under in the Sharia law?
It comes under the Hiraba Code, which is Highway Robbery Code, forceful criminal act, and it's very simple.
And what are the punishments for someone who gets caught for rape?
The punishments are very, very severe.
Which is in contrast...
To put it in simple terms, punishment is death penalty in Islam for rape.
So, essentially, this is in contrast to the secular liberal narrative where some rapists get only 1 or 2 years.
And they come out and re-offend.
Yeah.
Well, you're right. So, in this case, Islam is quite reasonable, and this is why we ask our atheists friends to go and study more about Islam.
Okay, thank you very much, Adnan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.